Welcome to another edition of Cliff Notes. I'm Clifton Smith from thecliftonsmith.com, and today we have a wonderful guest out in San Francisco, a close friend of mine, Eric Gallegos. Eric, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric. Like Clifton said, I'm in San Francisco. I'm out here in fintech, hustling every day. I recently moved here. My background is I basically have had a little experience in pretty much everything. I produced a film. I've worked at a construction company in food. So I'm like a jack of all trades, so to speak.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about you is your work you did running the documentary Bite Size. So about childhood obesity, was with you there to see sort of the progression and the things you learned there. And one of my favorite things talking to you is understanding how to craft a great message. And that's today's topic, utilizing Harvard Business Review's Guide to Persuasive Presentations. I'm sure you have all been sitting in a horrible lecture or a horrible presentation. So what makes a great presentation, Eric? You laugh because you've been in one and I've been in many. Professors tend to, be experts in giving a very bland presentation.
Sure.
But, what's kind of like your favorite presentation you've given and like the best feedback you've received to make those presentations really, really sink in, something that's like pretty memorable.
Sure. So I think that the key to a great story, and it kind of goes hand in hand with presentation, is really identifying who the hero is, right? And playing to the hero. So for example, if I'm giving a presentation, my job in that sense is to take the audience and make them the hero of the story. And what I mean by that is like truly understand what they want to learn and why they're there, and guide them to understand something new.
So people come to you to learn something, right? They come there because they think you can teach them. So exactly. Really understanding, why it is they came, right? And that's the hero. Okay, very cool. What else?
Yeah, so and what kind of informs that is you have to really prepare, right? I think if I have 5 minutes to speak, I need like a week to prepare to really get a succinct message down and really kind of hammer home what I want to say. But when I was making my film, I had this wonderful meeting with a guy. His name's Davis Guggenheim. He's a Academy Award-winning director and producer. He did an Inconvenient Truth. And I was maybe 22, 23 years old, and I was sitting there with my director. I produced it, and we had a conversation. And he was asking us about the film, and he asked us, where's the story, right? And we were like, well, here it is. We had just put together something. And he goes, there's nothing there. And we were like, whoa, this is crazy. We've spent 10 grand on this or whatever it was in a couple months. And he basically said, hey, you need to find really compelling characters. And how you do that is by finding characters who have stakes, right? Something to lose. And you kind of tie that back to this idea like of a presentation. Like somebody comes into a room when you're going to give a lecture or a presentation or something, they're there for a very specific reason. They want to learn something. If you can fill that void, right, that need, then you've made a difference, and now you've created a mark that they'll remember. That's truly memorable.
Very cool. And so to go on that, like, how do you make that mark? So one thing that I've learned is to talk about what is and then what could be, and really analyze the difference and the struggles and paint that picture, and using both logical appeals and emotional appeals, because some people appeal to the head and the heart.
Right. So that's actually a very good point, and like an interesting part. A mechanic of presentations. So the way that our brains are designed, right? There's three parts. There's the lower brain, the midbrain, and then the cortex. The cortex is where we analyze and understand all information, right? Like math, for example, algebra. However, in order to get to the cortex, you have to go through the lower brain and the midbrain. But the lower brain is what's called the amygdala. It doesn't understand anything but emotions. So in order to appeal to someone, really have them understand, you have to go through there first. So a good way, a good tactic, I guess, that I employ when I'm doing presentations is I'll come up with like some kind of an attention grabber, something crazy. For example, with Bite Size, I've been doing a tour of schools and underprivileged communities and teaching them about health and nutrition. And one of the things that I do is the very first image that I have on screen is a soccer stadium, right? It's in Spain, and it's filled to the brim. And then the first thing I say is, hey guys, if you multiply this 3 times. That's how many kids in the US have type 2 diabetes. Immediately, right out of the gate, I've got their attention. Right now, they're open to whatever I have to say next, and they're willing to kind of go on this journey with me to understand what I'm trying to teach.
Awesome. And so what you did was you really brought to life statistics, right? Some people have a very hard time understanding magnitudes and orders of magnitude.
Right.
And so what you've done is you've translate that into something that people could see, visualize, and understand. And another area that goes to the nitty gritty that I've always found interesting is the small details really matter. So while it may seem fairly trivial when you give a presentation, where people are going to stand, what the other people are doing while the person who's talking is giving the presentation, how you introduce yourselves.
Right.
And a fun trick that I've always done is if you can, shake the hands of all the judges. And that's just sort of breaks this mold of I am just here to present, and it makes you a much more approachable, agreeable person. And now they view you not just as a sounding piece, but as an actual human being and someone who has charisma.
Sure.
And to jump into that right before presenting, what you can do is you can listen to a wonderful, like your jam, your soundtrack that just gets you so jazzed up, and you get yourself into a great posture state. Say, I am awesome.
Sure.
And it'll get you in that an energetic state of mind to give that presentation.
Absolutely. No, I totally get that. And it's kind of an interesting idea. Like in film, there's this thing called breaking the fourth wall, where a character in the movie will speak to the audience. This kind of reminds me of that in a way, because when you're giving a presentation, I think most of the time the format is kind of that movie structure, right? Where like people are watching you and not engaging with you. And that's another good point. Like a great presentation is a conversation with you and the audience. And that doesn't happen very often, where they're really engaged, they're asking you questions, and you're having, if you go off script, it's okay. What's the point, right? Come back to that idea. Like, what am I trying to teach? What am I trying to impart to this audience? And if you can accomplish that, like, a conversation sometimes is even better than the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the final things that I have to share is to create an effective call to action. So you've got their attention, you've motivated them, you've brought them through this hero's journey. So what is it specifically that you want them to take? What action do you want them to take? And especially with today's technology, is you can actually connect with them after the presentation. Sure. And just like you mentioned, it's a conversation, it's a dialogue. You can continue that dialogue after the presentation. And so how have you used that call to action in your documentary, in your presentations? What are some of your favorite call to action?
So, I mean, for the presentation, what I usually do is I'll set up a recipe, right? Because the presentation is about healthy eating and understanding, what a refined carbohydrate is, what sugar is, like what kind of food they should be eating, right? Eat this, not that, kind of a deal. And I'll set up a recipe, and I will provide my email address and say, if you want this recipe, send me an email. And I don't just give the recipe away. I create a small barrier, very small step, so that they will actually do it. So it does two things. Then now I can track who's interested in learning more, and I give them this recipe, and it's a direct interaction. It's like they're working for it rather than just being given this information.
That's awesome. And I think that goes to the point of, like, go with the end in mind, right? What is it that you want your audience member to come away with, and what do you want them to do? And so for you, it's to motivate healthy eating, motivate understanding and awareness of obesity and health and fitness. And for pitches, it may be, I want to have a conversation that isn't in a pitch deck format with a potential investor.
Sure.
Right. And so a lot of times people feel that in these presentations to investors, they have to show them everything and explain everything thoroughly. In reality, a lot of times it's just to pique their interest enough and know that you've thought about this a lot to have a follow-up conversation.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think having a very specific, work backwards from what you want. Like, what do you want the result to be from the conversation, the presentation, whatever it is, and then build from there, build backwards. On that note, you mentioned the hero, and we talked a little bit about this. If you're interested, I would Google Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. It's like a circle that kind of guides you through, the ideal situation in terms of a presentation. You kind of build it around that. It's not, exactly what you would do, but it's a good framework to follow.
Awesome. Very cool. And with that, we're going to close, and we hope that you came to this with a curiosity on how to create a better pitch, a better presentation. And we hope you've come away with a few tactics, skills, and strategies to do so. So I'm here with Eric Gallegos, and of course I'm Clifton Smith, and we hope you join us next time for Cliff Notes. Thank you.